जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनन्दन भज जनरञ्जन यशोदनन्दन भज जनरञ्जन यमुनतीरावनचारी Canto 1, Chapter 4, Verse 16. Paravarajñasa rishi Kale navyaktaramhasa Yugadharma vyatikaram Praptam bhuvi yuge yuge Paravarajñasa rishihi कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा
कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा
युगधर्म व्यातिकरं
युगधर्मव्यतिकरं
प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे
प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे
परावारज्ञस ऋषिः
परावरज्ञः स ऋषिः
कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा
कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा
युगधर्म व्यतिकरं
युगधर्मव्यतिकरं
प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे
प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे परावरज्ञः स ऋषिः
परावारज्ञस ऋषिः
कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा
कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा
युगधर्मव्यतिकरं
युगधर्म व्यतिकरं
प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे
प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे परावरज्ञस ऋषिः कालेन व्यक्तरंहसा युगधर्म व्यतिकरं प्राप्तं भुवि युगे युगे para avara past and future nya one who knows saha he rishihi vyasadev kalena in the course of time avyakta unmanifested ramhasa by great force yugadharma acts in terms of the millennium vyatikaram anomalies praptam having accrued bhuvi on the earth yuge yuge different ages translation the great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. The great sages like Vyasadeva are liberated souls, and therefore they can see clearly past and future. Thus, he could see the future anomalies in the Kali age, and accordingly, he made arrangement for the people in general so that they can execute a progressive life in this age, which is full of darkness. The people in general in this age of Kali are too much interested in matter, which is temporary. Because of ignorance, they are unable to evaluate the assets of life and be enlightened in spiritual knowledge. Translation: the great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajata Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि घोर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 4, text number 16, where Srila Vyasadeva is saying anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. So that is one of the qualities or characteristics of this material world. Everything degrades in the course of time. Whatever knowledge has been acquired is subject to change, and whatever possessions one may come to in their life, all these possessions in due course of time, they dwindle, degrade and wither away. Real knowledge is the truth, which is unchangeable. The Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken 5,000 years ago by Srila Sukadeva Goswami to his disciple Parikshit Maharaj, who was cursed to die in 7 days. So Parikshit Maharaj spent the last 7 days and 7 nights of his life constantly, without cessation, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam from Srila Sukadeva Goswami. So 5,000 years later, here we are assembled in Sri Devasadan Mandir in Detroit, and nothing has changed. This timeless scripture is just as relevant today as it was 5,000 years ago, and it will be just as relevant forever in the future, because this is the eternal truth and is not subject to change. Many years ago, scientists, anthropologists, and people in that field of expertise, they started working on cracking the secrets to evolution. So they made many studies and concluded that from a single cell, life grew into different life forms, culminating or eventually evolving into apes. And then there was something called the Neanderthals, who were the link somewhere between apes and human beings, who had more capabilities than the primitive apes. And somehow they concluded that all of this culminated in the human species. But there was one missing link. And for many, many years, they were engaged in deep study, trying to understand that missing link, about how evolution eventually culminated in the human species. And then when they were digging on some island somewhere in Britain, owned by the British, they found a skeleton. And upon close study, they realized that this was the missing link. So there was great celebrations in the scientific community Many studies were undertaken, many papers were published, and this actually made it into the textbooks in schools and universities. As the missing link, they had finally cracked the case and found the missing link in the evolution. So many years this was being taught in schools and colleges. Then one day, they found that all of this was a hoax. The island where they found it, there lived a man who was a rogue. He had lived his whole life in obscurity. So in order to become famous and to make his town famous, nobody even knew about his island. So to make that place famous, he had actually dug the ground up and placed these skeletons in the ground. And then they finally found these were not real skeletons at all. But for a decade they had been teaching in schools and colleges that this was the missing link. So Srila Prabhupada says this world is made up of cheaters and the cheated. So there are people who want to cheat, and there are people who want to be cheated. So they come together, nature arranges them for them to come together, and there's cheaters and there's cheated. So knowledge that is constantly subject to change cannot be considered the eternal truth. The eternal truth is that which is unchangeable. Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and Nectar of Devotion, and these timeless books, they have knowledge that will remain unchanged for millennia because they are presenting the absolute truth. So we are very fortunate that we have come in contact with these scriptures that can reveal to us the greatest secrets of who we are and our purpose in this world. So we must carefully study these books. These books must be studied and meditated upon, not for the sake of just simply acquiring knowledge, but to apply that knowledge to achieve the highest goal of human life, which is to understand our relationship with Krishna and surrender unto Krishna. In our movement and outside of our movement also, sometimes people have become obsessed with acquiring knowledge. So they read books, they spend their entire life reading books. And if we are not careful, then we may forget the purpose behind reading these books. The Srimad Bhagavatam tells us, Atha pumbi dvijashreshta varnashrama vibhagasaha swanushchitasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. Whatever endeavors we may be engaged in, the ultimate goal of all those endeavors is haritoshanam, working for the pleasure of Sri Hari, the personality of Godhead. So if we please the personality of Godhead, then all our efforts are perfectly successful. So the goal of acquiring knowledge is not so we can be a great scholar and impress people with our knowledge. If we are able to quote many verses randomly from different parts of the scriptures, but if our goal is to simply be a scholar and illustrate to the world our scholarly knowledge, then that knowledge is useless. Jai Shri Shri Radha Kunja Bihari. One time in Sri Rangam, there lived a very great saintly personality by the name Parasara Bhattar. When Parasara Bhattar was just 5 years old, In those regions, there used to live a great Digvijay Pandit, who was a very great scholar. And his specialty was debate. He was undefeatable in debate. And in those days, the great sport was debate. Just as in these days, we have so many great sports, basketball and football, and so many tens and thousands of people show up to watch these games, and many millions watch on their television. In those days, they didn't have such a great interest in sport. The great interest was in debate. So if you were an expert debater who was not defeated in debate, then you were celebrated as a hero. And these people acquired considerable wealth and influence and followers. So there lived a Digvijay Pandit who was so scholarly, nobody could defeat him in debate. And over the course of time, he became so proud of his prowess that he actually started to travel from one town to another, challenging people to debates. And he arrived with an entourage of people, elephants. There were people in front of the procession playing on drums and blowing horns. It was like a festival. Then he would go from one town to another, challenging, is there anybody in this town, one person who can debate with me? And most people would not take up the challenge because they knew this man could not be defeated in debate. And as he arrived, many people actually scattered and left. The pundits, they were afraid of him. They would leave as soon as this man arrived in town. So one such day, this procession arrived in Sri Rangam. And as usual, many people, the common people, they gathered on the streets to watch this spectacle. So as the procession made its way through the towns, this man loudly proclaimed, this is a holy town of Sri Rangam, there must be so many pundits here. Isn't there even one person who can debate me? And he was speaking in a very condescending way, looking down upon the people from his elephant upon which he was seated. And nobody ventured. Then as the procession arrived to where this little boy, Parasara Bhattar, lived, just out of curiosity, this boy also ran out to join the many hundreds or thousands of people who had gathered there to watch this Digvijay Pandit. And as the procession arrived, this little boy, the 5-year-old, he heard this man loudly proclaiming, I am the greatest. There is no one who can defeat me in debate. If there is anybody who dares to debate me, step forward now. And Parasara Bhattar, this 5-year-old boy, he stepped forward and he stopped the procession. He said, sir, I can debate you. As the Digvijay Pandit looked down, this was just a boy, a 5-year-old boy. He said, you're just a 5-year-old boy. This is no time for debate. You must be playing with your friends. I don't debate with little boys. But Parasara Bhattar said, but you just called out asking for anyone who could debate. Why are you refusing to debate me? I am ready. Are you ready to accept the challenge? So when he was challenged in this way, even though it was just a mere 5-year-old who was asking if the Pandit was afraid to debate with him, the Digvijay Pandit said, all right, I will debate with you. Then Parasara Bhattar said, is there anything you cannot answer? The Digvijay Pandit said, to this date, nobody has ever asked me a question that I was unable to answer. There is no question in this world that I cannot answer. What is your question? As soon as the Digvijay Pandit spoke like this, the little boy, 5-year-old Parasara Bhattar, he bent down, scooped up a handful of sand in his palm, his little palm. He held it up for the Digvijay Pandit to see. And he said, sir, you just said There is no question you cannot answer. There is nothing you do not know. So then you must be able to tell me how many particles of sand are in my hand. Please tell me, how many particles of sand am I holding in my hand? The Digvijay Pandit was stunned. Nobody in his entire career had asked him a question he could not answer. And now the crowd waited with bated breath. A hush descended on the crowd. Everyone fell silent, looking towards the Pandit for the answer. And his Pandit was silent. He was quiet. And Parasara Bhatta repeated his question, "Sir, please answer my question. You said there is nothing you do not know. There is no question you cannot answer. Please tell me how many particles of sand am I holding in my hand?" For the first time in his career, the Pandit was lost for words. He was used to being asked question in grammar and question about the Shastra and so many different intricacies of Sanskrit language, the Tamil language. So many different things people had challenged him and failed. Nobody had asked him what appears to be a very mundane question. But yet he didn't have the answer to that question. How many particles of sand in the little boy's hand? Who could tell? There's only one person, the personality of Godhead, who can answer that question. So the Digvijay Pandit fell completely silent. And the people were all looking towards him, waiting for an answer. And the Pandit had no answer. For the first time in his life, he had been defeated. And then Parasara Bhatta, this 5-year-old boy, he spoke to the Pandit. And he said, the purpose of all knowledge, of all realization, is to humble us to a point where we can understand we are simply insignificant beings in an unlimitedly large creation. If all our knowledge, if all our power, if all our influence makes us proud, then all that knowledge, all that power, all that influence is just as worthless as this sand that I hold in my hand. Saying that, Parasara Bhatta threw that handful of sand onto the ground. The Digvijay Pandit got off his elephant. He walked towards this 5-year-old boy and he offered his obeisances. Parasara Bhatta later on went on to become a very great Acharya, a disciple of Srila Ramanujacharya, and he made many disciples and inspired thousands and thousands of people to surrender unto the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. So whatever knowledge we may be engaged in acquiring, all of that knowledge, all these studies should humble us to a point where we understand we are simply fully dependent upon the personality of Godhead. So that should be the goal of acquiring knowledge, is so we can please Guru, we can serve Guru in such a way that he is pleased with us and please the personality of Godhead. Yesterday I was hearing a lecture in which my Guru Maharaj was explaining that there have been people who studied so many books and made it an obsession to acquire knowledge. He said there was one disciple of Srila Prabhupada who was always walking around with books. He was reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, books on comparative religion. He had acquired so much knowledge that Srila Prabhupada himself called him Panditji. He would call him Panditji. And then one day Srila Prabhupada told him, all this effort you're making just acquiring knowledge by reading so many different books is just a waste of time. If we simply engage in serving the personality of Godhead to the best of our efforts and work under the direction of Guru Sadhu, Shastra, and the Vaishnavas, then Krishna will give all realizations. All the realizations that you cannot even acquire by reading these books. Such realizations Krishna will give you. Simply engage in Krishna's service. Srila Prabhupada said we have given the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Nectar of Devotion. He said these four are enough to deliver us the supreme perfection in this very lifetime, Krishna Prema. He said there is no need to read any other book or acquire knowledge from any other books. These four are enough. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam alone can bring us to the platform of Prema Bhakti. We may read other books that are related to these four just as an embellishment to deepen our understanding of these literatures. But even that effort should be only to please Guru and Krishna, to serve in such a way that we can please Guru and Krishna. There have been cases, instances where people acquired so much knowledge from these very books, Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, but because their goal was acquiring knowledge, not to necessarily please Guru and Krishna, they had become so obsessed with being a scholar and acquiring knowledge. Some people eventually lost faith in the process of bhakti and even lost faith that Krishna is a person, and they became impersonalists, Mayavadis. That's why Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita, Tadviti pranipatena pariprashtena sevya upadekshenti te jnanam jnaninas tattva darshina. We must approach a bona fide spiritual master and work under his direction with the view to pleasing him and please the personality of Godhead. Then all the knowledge we acquire from these books will find their perfect purpose. Otherwise, we are simply wasting our time. Srila Saraswati Thakur, he was such a great scholar. He was such a great scholar that it was said that even the British people did not have a vocabulary of the English language like he did. And he could use each word perfectly, relating it to describe the process of bhakti. He was such a great scholar. But he approached a bona fide spiritual master, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, for initiation. He said, Maharaj, please initiate me. And Babaji Maharaj said to him, you are a scholar of philosophy, a scholar of astrology, a scholar of theology. I'm just a simple man. How can I initiate you? Now, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he had actually been a grain merchant. And when his wife died, he was a grihastha, when his wife died, he simply went to Vrindavan and surrendered to the personality of Godhead. A very simple person who could barely read or write because he was not educated. Yet he had the greatest, deepest realizations of bhakti because he was fully surrendered and engaged in service to his Guru and to Krishna. So when Srila Saraswati Thakur approached him, he said, I'm just a simple man, I don't accept any disciples. And Srila Saraswati Thakur was heartbroken. He went many times. And ultimately he said to Babaji Maharaj, if I cannot get shelter at your lotus feet, then what is the use of this life? It is better that I just drown myself in the Ganges and give up my life. Now Srila Saraswati Thakur was not speaking whimsically. He was not speaking as part of a strategic plan to convince Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj to give him initiation, give him shelter. He was actually feeling that way within the core of his heart. See, these great souls, they can not only hear our words, but they can actually see right through our heart. If we are actually being sincere or if these are just words that are hollow and have no substance. One time, during the time of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, there was a great orator who was inspiring many people with his narrations of the topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. But Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, he said, this man is a cheat. In the daytime, he's pretending to be a sannyasi who's attached to the subjects of Srimad Bhagavatam, but in the night time, he's actually having an illicit affair with a widow. He said that. And one night, as everybody was taking rest in the ashram, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj woke up and he loudly started saying, "You cheater, you hoax, you manipulator." He was screaming loudly, and the people around him woke up and said, "Maharaj, what happened?" And he said, "You go to this place, and you will find that orator of Srimad Bhagavatam engaged in illicit relationship with this widow." So they rushed to that place that Babaji Maharaj had indicated. And sure enough, they found this person with the widow in the middle of the night. So the great souls, when we approach them and submit to them, they can see right through our hearts and see our intention. Krishna is also like that. One of Krishna's names is Bhavagrahi Janardana. One who sees the intent behind everything we do. So what we do is not so important to the personality of Godhead as the intent in which we do things. What we do is also important, but with what intention? Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prachati. So even if one offers a little fruit, a flower, a leaf, a little fruit, a flower, or some food or water, with bhakti, with devotion, Krishna accepts that. So our intention is of utmost importance. So when Srila Saraswati Thakur approached Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj in this mode, his heart melted and he accepted Srila Saraswati Thakur as his disciple. But what a statement Srila Saraswati Thakur made for the rest of the world at that time and for all time to come, that we cannot seek Krishna's pleasure, we cannot seek Krishna's grace through the medium of knowledge. If that were so, Srila Saraswati Thakur would have sought the shelter of someone very educated and scholarly. But he surrendered to someone that could barely read or write. To make such an emphatic statement for the rest of the world for all time to come, it is not knowledge that will help us achieve the lotus feet of Bhagavan, Sri Krishna. In fact, all this knowledge cannot even give us faith in this process. This faith only comes in the association of devotees when we sincerely serve Sri Guru and Krishna. And when we, in the association of such devotees, then acquire knowledge, all of this knowledge will bear fruit. So we must carefully study Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the nectar of devotion under the guidance of great souls. And when we acquire knowledge in this way, then we can understand all of the conclusions of Shastra. If we have a lot of money, if we have a lot of influence, but we do not use those possessions for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, then everything is just a waste of time, because the conclusion is not right. However, if we, to the best of our abilities, use everything in Krishna's service, then all the efforts we have made to acquire those things, they become bhakti. Because in conclusion, we are using it in Krishna's service. So because the conclusion is right, all our efforts become bhakti. Otherwise, the Bhagavatam says, Dharma Swanashtita Pumsam Vishwakseno Katasuya Notpade Nidiratin Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam. It is just useless labor. So we must understand the conclusions very carefully and apply ourselves diligently to the study of these scriptures, which Srila Prabhupada has very kindly made available for us and for the whole world. So these scriptures will benefit mankind for the rest of forever. And we must not only carefully study these, but to the best of our ability, ensure that the world at large has access to these timeless scriptures. Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments or realizations you would like to share, Mataji or Prabhu?
Just realization, like when I first came to Krishna consciousness, or after some time, like, we attend Bhakti Riksha programs and all these things, but until we took Bhakti Shastri course, which is available now all over ISKCON and stuff, and you study these 4 books, then everything snaps together, right? Otherwise, you're like picking and choosing knowledge, you're hearing various things and stuff like that, but the whole thing comes together so beautifully, and it's only possible because of Srila Prabhupada bringing all this nectar here. It's just amazing. But I always think when all this information that these temples are like education centers. This is where you can learn so much and put your learning to practice as well too. So it's very nice because knowledge is there to bring us to the point of humility. Right? That was very nice. Thank you for that. Very nice lecture.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you for your
nice thoughts came in. I'm hearing from you.
Thank you for the kind words of encouragement, and thank you for sharing those realizations. It is actually very true.
Just repeat, who were the 2, one, who was the, because I was...
Yeah,
sorry.
Parasar Bhattar.
Parasar Bhattar.
Parasara Bhattar. He was a disciple of Srila Ramanujacharya, who himself went on to become a very great Acharya. And through his life's teachings, he taught so many incredible lessons. And this pastime happened when he was just 5 years old with the Digvijay Pandit. And the Digvijay Pandit is a general term for some great scholar. Lord Chaitanya also engaged in debate with the Digvijay Pandit many years ago. And this boy's name was Parasara Bhattar. Yes. Yeah.
Digvijay means like winner of the debate.
Something like that. In those days, that was a big sport. Even during Lord Chaitanya's time, people didn't care so much about sport, in those parts of the world at least. Debate, if you were a great scholar who could defeat anybody in debate, then you were celebrated as a hero. And that's how the Pandit came in contact with Lord Chaitanya and was defeated in debate. We just very recently, we heard that story, didn't we, around the time of Lord Chaitanya's appearance day, Gaur Purnima. We heard that story. It was Niti Krishna Prabhu who was narrating it very nicely here. So it was like a sport in India. The focus was all on acquiring scholarly knowledge. So it was a big source of pride and influence in those days to be a debater who could not be defeated in debate. There was many like this. Actually, there was one very nice debate, but I'll maybe describe that in another class, that happened in the palace of the king during the time of Yamunacharya. That was also a very wonderful debate where somebody had become very proud and he was defeated in debate by Yamunacharya. That's also an incredible pastime. So maybe we'll discuss that in another class. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.